In today's show, we discuss what makes good evidence and also the term whataboutism.
And now, the TNT Talk Show, daring to go where other podcasts fear to tread.
Hello, I'm Tony Fasula and I share the stage with my esteemed friend and colleague, Tayo Boya. Tayo, hello, my friend, once again. I hope you are keeping safe and well.
Yeah, what the hell, Tony? What you gonna do, eh? Oh, wow. Well,
Yeah.
I think I'm doing better than you, dude, right now.
Yeah, I've got COVID at the moment.
The second time you've had COVID.
Second time, yeah. It's been a while since the first one, though.
And now you're fully vaccinated.
I am fully vaccinated.
Was this an easier COVID than the first time?
Absolutely, yes.
Oh, well.
Very
So
much
the vaccines actually, at least based on your anecdotal evidence, have had a positive effect.
I would assume that, I suppose. We don't know. We don't know. I mean, I've still assumed I've still got antibodies. But it's like, I mean, obviously it's still a flu because that's what the coronavirus was, but it wasn't this time round. It was definitely not anywhere like the first one. The first one was awful, where my blood oxygen level dropped to really dangerous levels.
I remember you told me.
Yeah, this time nothing like that at all.
Wow.
Obviously, I feel rough as you do on any flu, I suppose, and equally you're coughing a lot, which I am still doing, but not to the same degree. Whereas before, when you coughed, my goodness me, the pain in the lungs. I mean, you've been through it yourself, so you can relate.
Almost freaking killed me.
Yeah, exactly. It was so bad. I mean, we don't know. We don't know whether the vaccine is stopping the symptoms to be quite as aggressive, or it's just become milder. I mean, they've said it's become milder because it's becoming more prevalent. So a combination of the two, perhaps. We don't know. We don't know. But I'm thankful that it isn't, too bad. Although, like any flu, you don't want to get out of bed. You're really tired, massive headache, all the usual symptoms. Although I've had flus in the past, this is worse than the flu, but granted, not as bad as the first instance of COVID anyway. But anyway, enough of me. I'm okay. I'm going to persist. I've got a deeper voice today. I don't know if it appeals to
really
our
sexy,
female
really
listeners.
Sexy. Yeah. We're going to have a whole bunch of women writing in.
Oh, dear. But please excuse me if I occasionally cough. I will put myself on a mute so that you don't have to go through the pain of hearing me cough. But anyway, I haven't asked you. Come on. Are we going to say hi to our audience? You haven't said.
You mean you didn't forget?
No, I didn't forget.
Fair enough. Obviously, you want to hear one of my jokes.
No, I don't. I don't want to hear your jokes. I just want you to say hello to the audience and be done. And let's move on.
Unfortunately, that's not the way this thing works. My friend. You torture me, I'll torture you back. Fair is fair. Well, okay. Hello, audience. Now that's out of the way. What do you call a dog? This is a two-parter for you, Tony. What do you call a dog that doesn't have any legs?
I'm sorry that I'm even going to ask, but I don't know. Go on.
It doesn't matter. It's not going to come running, is it?
Oh no, he's got me going.
like I told you, it's a two-parter. So the second part of that is what you call someone who has neither arms nor legs.
I don't want to ask.
Rude names. Why? What are they going to do about it? Okay.
These are so bad, and I'm really trying not to laugh because they're so bad. Because I don't want to cough.
You shouldn't have asked me to the audience. You should just have let it go for this week. Anyway,
let's
that's
move on.
in recognition of your condition. I'll let you. I'll
Thank
stop
you.
there.
Thank you. You're not just paining the audience, you're paining me here. Anyway, let's move on with the show. Now, in today's show, we're discussing what makes good evidence, and a term linked to that is whataboutism. Natalia, this was your subject, so I'll ask you to kick off as to your gripe as to what makes good evidence.
My gripe is that you accuse me in our private, audience, apart from these arguments that Tony and I have on air, so to speak, here in the podcast, we're constantly arguing on social media. So we argue all the time. And Tony has taken to...
I do love him, really. I despite the arguments.
You won't be able to tell from some of the things he says to me. Tony's been arguing for a while and saying that... I started it off, actually. I'm the first person who brought up this whataboutism because Tony, but I used it properly. And in my opinion, Tony doesn't use it properly. He accuses me of saying whataboutism when I say, well, what about this? So I wanted us to thrash this out in public, so to speak, here. And we're going to do that today. We're going to thrash out whataboutism. Now, if you don't know what that is, whataboutism was a term that was coined in, I believe, 1972 or 1973, about the Soviet Union, because whenever the Soviet Union was accused of human rights abuse and things of that nature, and anti-free press and so on and so forth, they would turn around and say, well, what about the West? The West with its racism and its history of oppression of native peoples and so on and so forth. And someone then coined this phrase, whataboutism, that look, you're being accused of A, and instead of addressing the accusation, you're turning around and saying, yeah, well, what about what you've done? So an example for that everybody can easily grasp is you have a roommate, or maybe you're just married and you have your spouse, and it's your turn to, I don't know, it's your turn to do the dishes or something, and you haven't done it. And then your spouse or your roommate says to you, you haven't done the dishes, it's your turn. And then you turn around and say, yeah, well, what about taking out the rubbish last week? You didn't do it. So it says, what about, yeah, I didn't do mine. Yeah, but what about you? Mm-hmm. This is what whataboutism is all about. It is concerns. And the idea is, the important thing about it is it doesn't address the fact that you didn't do your part of it. Exactly. You didn't hold up your end, or whatever it is that you are guilty. It's like going to court and say, yes, I killed this person, but so what? Other people have killed me. It doesn't work. It doesn't work that way.
I'm still confused as to why you think I've used that term wrongly, because I've always understood it that way.
Right. Because when I use it, I am using it to highlight the hypocrisy, and I'm saying,
but isn't that the same thing?
No.
You're carrying.
I haven't landed yet. I haven't finished. Okay. So I'm saying that the person who is being a hypocrite doesn't then have the right to make the accusation. So in the case of the spouse, if the spouse really has not taken out the trash, or in England we say the rubbish, if he hasn't taken out the rubbish last week, then frankly you don't have a leg to stand on. It's like you uphold your end of the duty of the bargain, and I'll uphold mine. Now, if an onlooker, if let's say a child in the house, and could be an adult child, it doesn't have to be a teenager or a youth, it could be just a third person or whatever, in the house says, well, I'm the one making the accusation. You didn't uphold your end of the bargain. That person has a perfect right then to say whataboutism. So it's who is making the complaint that bothers me. So in the case of the court, remember I said about court that you murdered someone, then you go to court and say, yeah, well, I'm not the only one who's murdered people. The government has murdered people. The court itself is an independent arbitrator and has not murdered anyone. The court therefore has a right to accuse you.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. But if it was a mafia don who was responsible for hundreds of murders, and then he went and said, yeah, I'm accusing you. So it's like, I'm sorry, that's hypocritical. I don't care what you say. That's where I'm coming from. That's the whole argument. It's who is the one making the accusation. When America
Do you know
makes,
why? Do you know why I have umbrage?
Mhm.
It's because we were having this discussion on a particular topic, and I said, look at what's going on over there. And you said, but what about the Americans doing X, Y, and Z? Hold on a minute. And I'm addressing the topic in question. It wasn't a dig at you. It wasn't saying that you were doing it. I was saying they were doing it, the Russians at that point. And then you piped in, whataboutism? What about the Americans doing this? Hang on, I raised the question, not the Americans. I did. So why did you
were raising it on their behalf? You were raising it on behalf of the Americans. You're standing
because
in.
it was an observation.
No, you're standing in for the Americans.
No, I'm not. What did I stand in for them? I'm Tony Fasulo. I'm standing in for me. No, I'm just something I've observed.
We were arguing America versus Russia. So if
no,
you argue America
we were arguing the
Russia,
West, and you piped up America.
Well,
anyway,
even the West. I'm perfectly happy to go with the West. It doesn't have to be America. Even the West. Do they have a leg to stand on? If you are arguing on behalf of your clients, your clients in inverted commas, if you're arguing in what's the word I'm looking for now? On behalf of the West, I have a right to say that you're standing in for them. You represent them. Okay. You're representing them.
Okay. I've got family in Australia. I'm talking on behalf of Australia. There you go. What about the Russians?
Okay, what about the Russians?
Now you can't go whataboutism.
No, I wouldn't.
Well, okay.
I wouldn't, unless you were talking about
you made that distinction just because I happen to be living in the UK. You made an assumption that I'm representative of the West because I'm living here. I've just asked the question. I wanted the question answering, not this whataboutism term to compare the hypocrisies of the states. Both sides have been hypocritical over the years. How far back do we go? We look in isolation. What's happening now? Let's address it now. You can't say like little kids, well, he pushed me first. No, he pushed me. Hang on. Look now, the situation. And that's what I wanted an answer for. And you would go, yeah, but what about the Americans in so many wars ago? That's not what we were discussing. And that was my issue about whataboutism.
No, I didn't take it that way. Sometimes we do argue across purposes. But I certainly didn't take that read like that. My read was that you were supporting and you were proposing. You were taking an American, and I would say American because they're the ones driving the Western narrative anyway. You were taking a Western narration. And I was opposing it. I was saying, look, I'm not going to listen to the West. Anybody in the West who's arguing yada, yada, yada is just hypocritical. Because how do you want me to...
You cut that out completely now.
Yeah, how do you want me to be interested in what you're saying? You oh, wow. I almost got the term in my head. Almost popped up there.
Almost popped up.
Which means... No, it didn't. It's almost because I can smell it, I can feel it. And it means when you go to court, it means the person who has the wrong word is gravitas, but it's something like that. The person who has the authority, and I mean here almost like a moral authority to bring a case.
Right.
There's some kind of notion that not just anybody can just bring any case against anyone. You got to have some kind of...
They've got the dog in the fight. They've got no, it's not that.
No, it's not a dog in the fight, no.
They've got a moral standing or...
They've got standing, maybe something locus locutus, something like some Latin term. Okay. And it's something like the kind of standing to bring it, to bring the case. And I'm saying that I don't see that whatever it is there in the West, that they can't bring anything, and nobody can argue from that point of view. So if your argument is going to be that Russia, I've even forgotten what it was, maybe it was the invasion or something, I can't remember exactly. I can't remember what it was.
Several weeks ago, but yeah.
But if you're going to bring that argument from what I would take to be a Western point of view, I'm going to argue. Now, if you happen to be, let's say, an Indian or Pakistani or someone like that, and you were bringing that argument, I would never say whataboutism. It's nothing to do with you. So if Tony happened to be Rishi Sunak for some just because it's in my head right now or in the news. If he happened to be like that, and you were saying, no, actually, Rishi Sunak being the Prime Minister of Britain is a very bad example. Modi, Prime Minister Modi of India.
Mm-hmm.
If you happen to be Prime Minister Modi of India, and you were talking about the Russia should have done this and Russia should have done that, I'd have to have a completely different set of arguments. I could never say whataboutism because what has India done? So it doesn't come up.
Okay.
But if it's going to be someone who, and I think my main argument was, if I recall, my main problem was that I hadn't heard you complaining about the goings on in Syria and Iraq. So for you, I could also ask, and I think it's a legitimate question, if it's not bigotry, why are you very concerned about what the Russians are doing, and you weren't equally concerned about what others were doing? Why aren't you, for instance, I've not heard you complaining about. No, hang on. Sorry?
You're cherry picking and you're selective listening. I've moaned when the Americans went into Iraq.
I didn't hear.
You didn't hear that?
I don't think you and I were even podcasting when the Americans went into Iraq.
No, but
Syria maybe.
Syria, sorry. Yeah.
Okay. I don't recall that.
And also went, funny enough, when they went into Iraq, because the loose links were just terrible there, and we know why they did it, and it was nothing to do with Saddam Hussein. It was all to do with oil.
Yeah.
So I moan then too. So it is what it is. But you then don't.
Have you? Okay, I'll ask another one because I wanted to do a show on Julian Assange, and you said no because I don't think you even know about Julian Assange. Did you?
Yeah, of course I do. We've got it on our list to do.
No, I put it there. Or you said you didn't want to do it.
No, I never said that. I didn't say that at all. I think now.
Are you interested in? Do you feel it's bad? Press freedom.
I think it's terrible.
RT not been able to do RT Russian television been kicked off.
I said the same. They should never have been kicked off. What should have been, if we live in a democracy, we uphold democratic views, and we say we let people have the freedom of speech. Although, if you look objectively at what RT, they are gutter press, though. It isn't great, but you shouldn't then, ban them completely. Press. Oh, it's terrible. They let the reporter.
Gutter press.
Yes, it is. Sorry, it's gutter press. If you listen to what they say, all the presenters have an opinion, and they voice that opinion. If you're reporting impartially, which is how proper media should be, you shouldn't be voicing your opinion as a presenter. You just shouldn't. Fox News over in the States, exactly the same. That's not reporting. That's passing people's opinion. Remember, they are somebody in a studio explaining what one of their reporters has, in quotes, seen and adding their steer on it. That's not reporting. That's changing information to your narrative. And both sides do it. It's just gutter press, sorry. But anyway, that's not what we're talking about here.
I wonder if you're not mixing up
evidence.
Between the top of the hour and the bottom of the hour, RT has news. Not all the time, but most of the time. Several hours a day. The top of the hour is the beginning of news. And the bottom of the hour is the end of the news segment. And then for the next 30 minutes, they have a magazine program. And one of the famous, I don't know about famous, but one of the, not most numerous, one of the, I don't know what you want to call it, I don't know. One of the programs there is run by a chap called, I think it's called Peter Laverne or something like this. A little bow tie chap and lives in Russia and everything. And I think it's called Talking Points or something. I can't remember exactly. I don't really like watching it, by the way. But he is very, very, like you're saying, it's very clear where he's coming from. And he brings in these talking heads and they talk about things. And you don't ever seem to hear a dissenting voice. There's not, you and I, either you and I disagree, or if we agree, we're bringing a third party or two to disagree with us. So you never hear just one point of view, not any of our shows.
Exactly.
But on his show, this is what you hear, and then you come away thinking that's a waste of time. I actually want to hear what's the best counter argument
Mm-hmm.
to that, because you learn a lot actually from listening to the two sides
Of course you
arguing
do.
about
Of
things.
course you do.
Right, but I would not say that I've heard their reporters, apart from a woman who was on it was an American RT. When we had American RT, I could actually name her. I don't know if I should or not, it doesn't matter. Which is, and then when that was closed down, she lost her job along with everybody else. And I took it to task on YouTube, on social media. And we quarreled. And then she began to see things from my point of view and changed. And I did that.
Wow.
She stopped editorializing, because that was my beef. That she would interview out like I interview you.
Yeah.
And then when you finish, say thank you very much, and then I'd editorialize what you had said and make it what I wanted to be.
Yeah. Which is terrible.
And not give you a chance to, because I think in a proper interview, the interviewee, the person being interviewed, should have the last word. I don't think the interviewer should have the last word.
I agree. I don't think that's the right way. But if it's Jordan Peterson, for our listeners here, if you want to find him on YouTube, there's a classic interview that he actually did over with a Channel 4. No, it's Channel 4. Yeah, Channel 4 female interviewer. She asked him a question and he responded, and she would then, so you mean this? and he'd say, no, that's not what I mean. Hear my words. And she kept taking his interpretation and changing it to her bias of what he said. And he said, no, that's not what I said. Now, however, there's two arguments here, two elements to this thing. It's the art of communication. You've got to get this right. When somebody's speaking, they are in their own head. So they're thinking a thought 100%. And they communicate out verbally if they're speaking. Now, the transition between the brain, 100%, what comes out your mouth is not the same. You get about 85%, between 80 and 85% words come out, which was 100% in your head. The recipient at the other end isn't picking up that 85%. They dumb it down. They only hear a percentage of that. So they may get between 60 and 70% of what you said, because their own biases, their own interpretations of what you're saying come into play. So they get a watered down message that you initially wanted to portray. That's why we have miscommunication. That's why people get the wrong end of the stick. It happens everywhere, even in top levels of government. That's why when you have to be clear with the way that you speak, and you have to repeat things. So if someone answers back based on what they think they've understood, then it's up to you to say, oh no, this is what I meant. Let me clarify. So that's proper communication, where you have someone conveying a message, the recipient receiving that message, but then clarifying on points of that message. So both eventually get what was originally intended. But this breaks down all the time. And this is how we have problems in the world, because people hear a bit of information and it's not fully formed, or it's fragmented, and they gain that information and take a different interpretation from it, and then act on that information based on their interpretation rather than the reality of what it was originally intended. And most wars, conflicts, and trouble in the world is caused because of this.
What evidence do you have of that? For that?
Evidence of it happens all the time. Miscommunication.
Oh, you said, okay, so first of all, you did say most wars are caused by miscommunication. But I've read and heard and understood that most wars are caused by resources, are fighting over resources.
There is, yes, resources. But the people, before they go into war, especially more modern age, they make their pain felt and known. But the people listening are not listening. So that they then feel they're not being listened to and they need to do something because they've got to resolve a resource issue. and then they go ahead and do things which lead into conflict. I mean, look at the issues now with Pyongyang in North Korea. Their narrative is they believe, and it's wrong belief, that for whatever reason, the Americans, South Korea are going to take them over. So they're constantly in fear, and that's why they do the saber rattling to appear strong. They're reinforcing themselves because they believe that they're going to be invaded any minute. And so it's wrong interpretation of messages that have been sent. And this is half the battle. It's understanding and trusting, that's the other thing, that what is happening when someone is telling you something. Do you trust them? Are they honorable? Do they have integrity? Or have they got a track record of not having these positive traits? And then,
would you say the Americans have a track record of being honorable?
I don't believe anyone really does.
No, I'm not asking about anyone.
Well,
and I wonder why did you then switch my question about the Americans to anyone? That's an interesting thing right there.
It is, because I don't want to slander them.
Well, I don't know why. Why would it be slander if it's true? And if it is not true, why can't you just come out in black and white?
It's my opinion, and yes.
Sorry, now, okay. What?
Answer your question. You asked me a question. You said, do you believe the Americans were or are, have they done anything with integrity in the past?
Do you believe that, I don't know if that's what I said, but I'll ask the question again, as best as I can. Do you believe that Americans are trustworthy and honorable?
I will answer that question. I don't want to put them completely to bed. I believe some of them try, but the high levels of administration who run the country at the present time, there is a group that it's like a puppet master of the head, and their intentions are not necessarily honorable. They're doing them for their own soul benefit.
If you were in Pyongyang and you were leader of Pyongyang, would you then trust the Americans?
I don't see it's got anything to do with the Americans. The
Americans are obviously the power, the superpower, which are which are underpinning South Korea. So if you don't trust the American, I don't want to put words in your mouth. So since the American superpower is underpinning South Korea, you've just said that you think that as a puppet master who are not necessarily honorable.
No, that's not what I meant at all. See, my miscommunication to you, and I apologize. What I'm saying is some of the administration in the US at the minute are totally looking at strategic plans around the globe to best serve them in the best way possible. And if it means the detriment of who they're, in quotes, assisting, then so be it. They're not doing it. So look, let's scratch their back. Let's help them out. We'll get something from it, from the deal, which is what a deal is. They get our support, but we get first bash of their services and their offerings. Now that's okay. That's a deal. If they're the opposing country that's asked for that, get a deal out of it, then it's win-win. Now, granted, America may have a better of the deal, but if it's a deal that both parties are happy to, that's not manipulation. That's in a marketplace, that's offering a service and getting a service back. That's business. But where you've got countries over a barrel, where you've got close to blackmail, because you're threatening them if they don't do X and Y, then that's wrong. And that's what I mean. If there's elements there where they're leaning on people to get them to behave a certain way, then that's not right. And that's what I mean.
My problem, and it comes back very, very nicely and neatly into the topic of this show, which is evidence, is what sort of evidence do you actually need to make the determination that the Americans are the most pernicious, dangerous, lunatic, unstable, decadent, degenerates,
That's a bit
dangerous.
harsh.
Dangerous. This is point blank because I'm a black and white man. Dangerous to the existence of the planet. This is what Americans are. There's a chap here called Harold Pinter. He is he was. I didn't know he was dead. The British playwright, and he wrote he won a Nobel Prize.
Okay.
Must have been for literature, I suppose. And this is a direct quote. Now, I don't have the source, but I assume it's something I can find if you challenge me to find it. My contention here is that the US crimes have only been superficially recorded, let alone documented, let alone acknowledged, let alone recognized as crimes at all. The United States' actions throughout the world made it clear that it had concluded it has carte blanche to do what it likes. The crimes of the United States have been systematic, constant, vicious, remorseless, but very few people have actually talked about them. And that, to me, in a nutshell, describes adequately the hundreds of thousands of civilians killed in Afghanistan over the last 20 years, the 500,000 children killed in Iraq, of which Madeleine Albright said something pretty horrible and just said, well, that's the cost of doing business. I paraphrase, that wasn't an exact quote. And of today's continuing theft of 66,000 barrels of oil, commonly reported, whether it is true or false, I don't know. This is the common report that America is stealing 66,000 barrels of oil every single day from Syria, all the while portraying itself as the bastion of freedom and democracy. All I'm trying to say is that I don't know what kind of evidence. I mean, Afghanistan is a fact. Iraq, and 500,000 children. This is documented. This is Madeleine Albright's response. Is there in black and white. The 66,000, like I said, it's on report. I don't think anybody can prove it, but then again, nobody has disproved it. All we know is that America is sitting on oil wells in southern Syria and is shipping out oil every single day. That's what we know. And this is evidence.
Where's
and
the
I want to know
that?
what
That's
kind
the
of
first
evidence.
one I've heard.
What kind of evidence do you need?
Well, we need to see it.
No,
That one there, I don't know about. I mean, I know about the other two.
Can you go? Are you going to go to Syria to look for yourself? We're talking about in this episode, what makes good evidence?
Well,
how would you want evidence presented? What to you, good question here,
okay,
would be good evidence to support my narrative that America is stealing Syrian oil? So that's a very specific thing.
You'd need several independent, unrelated nations witnessing it, videoing it, showing it happening. That's a complete, there's no denying that, because you've got video evidence from several different independent countries, unlinked to one another, no agenda, no collusion, and they show this being done, and they can see it, and it's America doing it without question. That's proper. I mean, if you look at it the nth degree, that'd be it. Caught with your, red-handed, that term, isn't it?
So it have to be several. What number is several?
What a number is several?
Yeah,
well, the more makes it better evidence, doesn't it?
Well, we're trying to pin you down now, Tony.
Well, pin you down. You've got different levels of evidence, haven't you?
No, you're saying what is good evidence. So I'm just trying to get you.
So how do you qualify good evidence?
That is what I just asked you, and okay. you said you want several non-linked countries with video evidence and no agenda, right? So no agenda, I understand. That's easy. Video evidence, I'm not struggling with that. Not linked, I'm a bit concerned about that. We'll swing back to that. But the very first thing that worries me is several. Several is a wishy-washy, nebulous thing, So what is several? That's what I'm asking. I'm just trying to pin you down. Is it 20? Is it 10? Is it, what? What do you mean by several?
You'd have to say several if you, as an arbitrary figure.
Yeah, so
five plus.
5 plus. So if I showed you from 4 different countries, you would think that's rubbish. You wouldn't accept that because
Oh, I
it's not
wouldn't
5.
say that, because evidence is like a scale, isn't it? It's
So
not,
what is your
not
absolute
black
minimum?
and white like you go.
No, what's your
It's-
minimum, Tony? What's your minimum? Just I'm trying to lead you
Well,
somewhere.
if
So just-
look this way, right? If if there's video evidence of a guy in a red, white, and blue flag American hat with a MAGA hat on, and he's actually taking the oil out of the ground in Syria and taking it to a ship, then only one is required.
Okay,
see what I'm saying?
so we have that, but more than that, I'm trying to pin you down. We have such videos, but
Have you? I'd like to see them, please.
It's very, very easy. Just look in the wrong place. I'll assemble them during the show if I can.
But what's that got to do with anything at the minute?
What is good evidence is what I'm trying to come
I'm not
down.
disputing they wouldn't do this. Absolutely not.
No.
But to condemn a man, you need the evidence to condemn them.
I don't want it to be theoretical. So we're talking about America stealing Syrian oil.
Okay.
And to do that, for me to convince you, because you said you know anything about it.
No, I didn't know.
I'm just trying to figure out, and as part of our show, what makes good evidence.
Right.
I'm trying to find out from you what you think makes good evidence. I think
several
we're getting
sources.
somewhere.
I've said to you several sources,
and we don't like several. So you said 5.
Yeah.
Then I took you to task and said, what about 4?
If it's good evidence from all 4, yeah, 4's good.
What about 3?
Maybe depends who they are.
Okay, so 3. So I don't even know what the source, because that also is another problem. Now, what is the source?
Well, let's put it this way: it's like a deck of cards. Yeah, if you have 3 good sources of evidence, all independent from each other, that's better than 10 pieces of evidence, which is flaky, from people that are all fairly related, that you could find links. So that then thinks, well, actually that's 10, but they could have a cabal. They could have got together, and it's a murkier because it's not as clear. So it's the quality of the evidence, the clarity. Does it really, put the marker on their head saying, yeah, it's definitely them, and also the impartiality of who provides the evidence. Also, their track record. If they're good at doing it and they've not got an axe to grind, you would take that highly. So it's all variable. There's no black and white here. It's when the evidence is presented, then you can ask these questions and see where it stands. That's why do you think we have courts of law? Nothing's black and white. I know you're a black and white type person because you're IT based, but the world doesn't work that way. It's scales of levels of grey. And so if you provide me...
Is everybody going to die, Tony?
I beg your pardon?
Is everybody going to die eventually on this planet right now? Everybody right now on this planet. Are we all going to die at one time, sometime in the future?
Well, that's an arbitrary question.
Yeah, but is it? No, never mind arbitrary. Yeah, fine.
If you freeze somebody in cryogenics, then they're not dead, are they?
If you freeze someone in
cryogenic state now, that's what's happening. They're not dead.
What the heck are you talking?
You've asked me a question, I'm giving you an answer.
So are you telling me that we have cryogenic science today where we can freeze something and it's not dead? I mean, a human, by the way. I don't. First of all, who? So anyway, let me get back. Are you saying
I'm playing devil's advocate here because you're trying to pin me into a black and white statement? I'm not saying there aren't any, but the majority, the edge cases like you've just given me, of course it's a black and white. Yes, we're all going to die.
So don't say there's no such thing as black and white.
I didn't say, okay,
that's what you said.
I'll rephrase it. The majority,
things,
the edge cases are black and white. There you go.
The majority of things are black and white. I can live with that, but you said all.
No,
so I challenged you on the all.
The majority are grey, shades of grey. The edge cases are black and white.
Oh, fine. Now then, so we got rid of that misunderstanding, if you like.
Okay.
And now back, you see, I'm
my incorrect communication. There you go.
And then we're going back to this thing about this or several, because what it sounds to me like, because I'm trying to challenge you on this idea of several, and I want to get you away from that and force you to acknowledge that actually you just need one credible source. Because one credible source.
If it's absolutely 100% credible and they've got integrity, track history, no issue with it whatsoever, of course.
Well,
but if
there
they're
you go.
murky,
So
if they're murky, then you've got a question.
So one credible source, you don't have to bring the murky into it. So
Well, of course you
don't
do.
need to introduce that into it, because when I asked you what makes good evidence,
What makes a good witness in a crime?
Is
what makes a good witness?
Hang on, is at least what makes good evidence? The answer would be at least one credible source. One credible, and if you want to add another term to that, would be is it incontrovertible? Is that the word I'm looking for? One credible, incontrovertible sounds like the wrong word, but a source who cannot be unimpeachable. I'm going to clap for myself. I finally got it. One credible, unimpeachable source.
Yes, but you put caveats on it. Yes,
like a CCTV camera that's been untampered with. It's credible and it's unimpeachable. It's just showing you what actually happened.
No, that's unfortunately not
real time,
correct.
by the way.
Real time, that's still not correct.
Right.
Because you can falsify video evidence. It's got to come from more than one source. Otherwise, it's not unimpeachable. Of course,
one CCTV camera that you installed and you've got control of, and it's on your network, and it's what's the word I'm looking for now?
And I'm searching for it, and I'm searching for that information.
No, you're sitting there watching it. So you're looking for your CCTV.
It's my CCTV TV. Yeah. I'd have more than one from different angles, but yeah, I wouldn't have all my eggs in one basket.
System.
Okay, fine.
But it's all pointing at one square, so I don't know. System on camera.
Different angles.
Different angles. Yeah. So you got one credible source, basically, unimpeachable source. Oh, to hell with it, Tony. You with your own two eyes.
that doesn't give unimpeachable. Do you know what? That is not good evidence.
To you, to your own eyes.
It doesn't matter. It's not good evidence, honestly. Because I've seen things and other people will say no.
So to now, me, what then makes good evidence to you? That's the whole question that we're asking today.
What makes good evidence to me that I've seen it with my own two eyes and other people have seen the same thing as me, corroborate the same thing as me, and even strangers will say, oh my God, I saw it too. Exactly the same as how you've described it. That makes it good evidence, because then you know I'm not hallucinating. There's not something wrong with me. Someone else has verified what I've seen. So they've reinforced what I've seen. That makes good evidence.
I think your criteria are suck big wind. That's why I got into arguments about CCTV being controvertible or impeachable.
Because I've seen so many examples of it being.
Yeah, but I'm saying the facts and evidence, man.
Yeah, but you can't, because you'd have to look at it in a court of law. Is it enough? Is it enough?
No, but that's not my idea of good evidence. Anyway, good evidence is evidence that no. Evidence is to me is whatever fits historical, objective, logical facts.
Yeah, but the facts. What do you get the facts from? You've got to have some reference.
What facts are? Facts are things which consistently produce a consistent and unimpeachable result.
Repeatable.
So if I put repeatable
by different people.
Yeah, by different people.
Okay, wonderful.
No. Those are facts, right? So,
okay,
if we have a situation, this Syrian oil thing. If I see one video and one accusation that Americans are stealing oil from Syria, I marry that to the information that Americans are in Syria and they're not anywhere but around oil wells. And I marry that to another piece of information that Syria, the actual government of Syria, which is recognized by the United Nations, has asked the Americans to leave, but they won't.
These are
I
correlations.
take those three
These are
things
correlations,
together.
not causation. You're making a correlation.
I am making a correlation.
Yeah.
But to me, that's evidence. That's good enough. I can live with that. To me, those are facts and evidence.
Right.
Until someone comes and says, "Do you know what? You remember that video you saw? Look at this. This is what was going on." At which point, I would immediately and automatically discount the other two things, which is Syria has asked them to leave and Americans are sitting around oil wells. And because I saw a false video, I no longer believe that narrative, and everything goes back into the gray box.
See, that's the difference between you and me.
I'm able to switch like my mind from I'm with this to it's that, simply because of the introduction of new evidence.
Okay.
But you get stuck to the blooming thing. You get married to it, and it's very, very difficult to move you away.
Yes, because I don't make a decision until I've seen the evidence through many eyes.
But
so
you're
that
watching things like the BBC, you listen to people like the BBC and CNN.
You see, you're now making an assumption, big style, and you seem to sandbox me into that area.
Well, anybody who listens to the BBC and CNN,
Why? See, again, that's a black and white statement.
Well, because the BBC is.
You think that everyone listening to the BBC is a complete moron and can't decide for themselves what's being said?
When you're only looking at a circus,
how do you know that that's all what we're looking at?
All you're going to see is clowns. Because I used to watch them. Because even now, I still get people who say, "Look at what the BBC said." And it's always clownish. It's clownish, and CNN is clownish. And by the way, even the way they write, I'm writing a series now. Well, I wrote one. I wrote one article, and I'm calling that a series. It's supposed to be a series of articles where I take a report and I break it down. This is on my LinkedIn, by the way. I know, it's hilarious. I've got a stack of them all lined up at the time, frankly, to go through them, and I just walk the reader through each line, and I show all where all the what do they call it now? The words that mislead, but it's a proper term. My English is just terrible now.
Seen from a former English teacher.
Wallish? What's Wellish?
What you're trying to say? Use different words.
I'm trying to say all the words that mislead because they are
ambiguous.
Sorry?
Ambiguous?
Yeah, not really ambiguous.
Or they lead to a certain narrative.
They are deliberately
steering
misleading
somebody to a particular narrative.
Yes, because they're used in such a way that you can pretend that you weren't being naughty.
Yes.
But actually you're being naughty.
The BBC does this, even though they're supposed to be impartial.
And CNN.
See, I know this. I'm not stupid. And a lot of people who watch the BBC are not stupid either. They're able to discern, oh my God, they're a bit biased, aren't they? But they can. A bit biased.
You're looking into if you just watch a circus, all you're going to see are clowns, and then you're going to miss what the hell is going outside the circus.
This is where it doesn't work that way. What you're doing is you're collecting it all and then coming with an answer.
You don't know? Do you know who Patrick Lancaster is?
Patrick Lancaster, I've heard the name. Yes, is he on GBN TV? That guy?
No.
Patrick Lancaster. Why do I know that name?
Do you know who Eva K. Bartlett is?
Eva K. Bartlett. I know that name as well. Well, I've heard these names.
Possibly because I've told you about them.
No, I know. I've heard the names.
All right.
Are they on GB News?
No, they're not on GB News. They're not on any social media. They're not on any news network.
Why do I know these names?
Because I've told you about them. Because they are independent journalists in Ukraine. Right? Reporting from the front lines. But reporting from the front lines from the Russian side. When I say that the Russian side, I just mean they're embedded on the Russian side of the fight. I don't mean from the Russian side of the argument. Because I don't even know who's actually reporting on the front lines from the Ukrainian side. I really don't. I'm prepared to listen, but I don't know how to find them. From the Russian side of the fight, from the actual front lines, from the Russian side, you have Eva, you have Patrick, and you have Graham Phillips, the English guy who's been sanctioned by the UK. Now, these people will never appear in Western press. It's not because they don't want to, but no one's going to run their stories. So you don't get to see them. So how the heck do you say you're getting an alternative point of view? I get my own point of view.
You don't get your point of view.
I get my alternative
over, so you're getting only one narrative.
I get it from Tucker Carlson.
Oh
and
dear.
The people he quotes. He quotes, if he, at the very least, he quotes CNN, he quotes MSNBC, he quotes it. So I don't have to get down and filthy because he quotes all these people. I listen to Sky News Australia, which is pretty bad, but it's better than Sky News. Yeah, it's shocking, but it's better than Sky News UK. It's still pretty shocking, but then I get the Western narrative, but in a format that I can listen to and watch without throwing up. But it's still very, very Western.
Okay.
So I've got that on one side, and then I get the others from the other side. And Tucker Carlson is actually sometimes he's very sensible, at other times he's very American. Yeah, but I still get something from him. Yeah. So I get what I call a balanced view. If you listen to just the BBC and
I
CNN,
don't listen to just the BBC. I wish you listen to what I say.
Okay, all right. So sorry. Do you watch? Who do you listen to from the other side of the argument?
From the other side of the argument, I listen to the Indian Times. I read a lot of the Indian Times.
Thing.
Yep.
But it depends on...
Independent. They're getting an independent view.
Actually, I would say that they're very anti-Chinese, and whatever impacts their relationship with China, it's true. Whatever impacts the relationship with China impacts their news report. So if Russia has done something that aids China, it's not going to look good on Indian press. True or false?
True.
There you go. So independent is not that. Yeah, okay.
Well, independent from their point of view, it's not totally. No one's totally independent.
No, Hindustani Times, I can live with some of the time, but I can't actually see when they're going off.
Yes, when they're going off. I cherry pick what I'm reading because some of the topics are irrelevant. And I know you dislike Al Jazeera, but I listen to Al Jazeera.
Al Jazeera used to be good. And their owner, the Emir of Qatar, I think it is. He threw in the towel when he got bombed when Al Jazeera got bombed by someone back in the noughties. He just threw in the towel because he just didn't want any trouble. And they've just become the same old with everybody else now, just a mouthpiece.
No, I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah, I don't really respect them at all. But I don't think we got to the bottom of what makes good evidence. But it is
no, it does. Well, the thing is, evidence. If you're going to take it, I always take it. It has to be solid enough to convict somebody, and you don't. You just take it based, and you link the pieces. So you take a bit, and you think, oh, in that case, that could be linked to this and to this. Oh, that makes it good evidence. To me, that doesn't make it good evidence. I need to see where good evidence has all those criteria that I've already mentioned, in so much that it's got to be independent, got to be several viewpoints and video evidence, etc. Then it becomes compelling. And
it's very odd that you say that, because I think you accept things that I don't.
Give me an example.
Because the linkage isn't there. Because the depth, the broadness of facts that support it just isn't there.
It's no, but like
our most recent argument was about these three scientists who said that they've claimed they have shown that the universe isn't.
They haven't shown it. They've come up with a hypothesis.
I thought that actually the actual story used the word proved.
Yeah, but that's to get a headline. You see, that's half the words. Your interpretation of the message. In this instance, the prove, you have to look through it and go, that's not really proving it. It's a hypothesis, because they haven't actually got the full evidence. They've come up with a hypothesis which it sort of implies that it could be true. And based on everything else so far, there's nothing to go against it. But that doesn't make it a given. Of course, it hasn't been proven. There's no hard evidence yet. Give an example, right? If you've got a 1,000-piece jigsaw, okay, And in this instance about the universe, they've come up with the first 50 pieces in one corner. So you can sort of roughly, look, I can see this picture here, right? In the bottom corner, because you've got 50 out of 1,000 pieces, and you've got a few odd here and there. You can imagine, because this is how it works. We fill in the gaps. We go, okay, that looks like something, a leg, or that looks like an animal or something. And you can either say, you can take a stab at the thesis and go, well, based on this information and what we know so far, we can make a correlation and a thesis about what this jigsaw is going to be. But if you've got 990 pieces in a jigsaw with only a few missing, and you haven't got the last few, you quite, in your opinion, say, you know what, I think I know what this picture is. I'm missing maybe 10 pieces, but there's enough here to give me a good 100%, well, not even 100%, a good stab at saying, yep, this picture is XYZ, whatever it may be. And that's what it works. We humans like to fill in gaps when we don't have the full picture. We have a rough idea.
Let's suppose it's 1,000-piece jigsaw, and you have 999 pieces, so one piece is missing.
Yeah.
Well, the pieces that is missing is the crotch, and everything else suggests that it's a man. You would jump to the conclusion that it's a man.
Yeah. Based
on I would assume, based on, because it's a naked, by the way, there's a naked figure. All right. So naked figure is muscular and whatever, and looks like, to all intents and purposes, looks like a man. But the crotch is missing.
With that one piece.
Just that one piece, yes, it's missing.
So, right.
Mm-hmm.
Are you saying you're going to find the piece now?
Yeah, we're going to find the piece. We're going to find out that when we put the piece in, that it's not a man.
It's still a man.
No, it's not a man. It's actually.
So a man is defined by whether they've got a crotch. What if they had an accident?
When we look at it, we expect to find.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we expected to say it was a man.
We're not expecting a picture with some weird edge case you want to invent.
Well, this is what you're saying. You've just put an edge case picture together.
I just finished seeing 2 days ago or whatever it was. I just finished looking at a picture of a female bodybuilder. And I would have taken that female bodybuilder as a, without being told, as a man. But actually, it happens to be a female bodybuilder.
Face as well.
Sorry?
You saw face, everything as well.
Well, no, the whole. I mean, she wasn't naked.
Oh.
She was wearing a G-string. But I just assumed, from the look of the creature, that it was a man. I was like, Sarah yada yada was born. And like, yeah, okay, I didn't know, they could develop that kind of musculature. And they were showing other female bodybuilders. And females can actually build that kind of musculature if they work at it.
And they inject themselves with steroids, yes.
Yeah, well, it was part of the argument, but I don't know. That was part of what this webpage was going on about.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm assuming that if they work really hard, they'll, because some females have got elevated testosterone anyway.
Absolutely right.
So I don't know why they need to inject themselves, but I'm not getting to the argument.
Not
All
enough
I'm saying
to
is,
do that, though.
You and I would have looked at that picture and just assumed that's a man. Then we get the last piece, and then it turns out to be female, not a man. I am more fluid in my mentality in shifting instantly to this new piece of evidence suggests this, and I can accept it. I don't need to struggle with it. You just.
Why are you making out?
She had an accident.
You're the one. You're the one who's more black and white than me.
She was struck by lightning because it's black and white. Because here it is. She's female with this crotch, with this.
Everything else about the image is manly hair.
Yeah, but
arms.
This takes the cake, baby.
This is it. Where you, unfortunately, are more biased than I am.
Eh?
Because that's because you are black and white in nature. You believe in just facts and evidence. So you should have said prior to that, oh, that image is not complete, I'm not even going to make a point of guessing because we're not finished there.
No, I can make assumptions. For goodness sakes, it looks like it, man. I mean,
then you're not black and white. Then you're not black and white. You're making an assumption without the full evidence.
It looks like a duck. It quacks like a duck. It walks like a duck.
Ah, well, that's exactly what I would have said.
It's just that you would have assumed it's a duck. But when it turns out to be a lizard, you're going to have issues with that, and I'm not.
Of course I'm not.
Yeah,
of course I'm not. You you are making an assumption now based on my views. You're thinking that means I'm entrenched in my views.
Anymore. We need, you know what? We're going to mark this episode part 1 because I don't think we've done anything. I don't think we've done anything in this episode, man. We're going to have to circle back to this at some point and have a more. I don't even know whether should we find a professor of philosophy or something.
But you wouldn't listen to them. You wouldn't. You wouldn't. I mean, it'd be like my whataboutism. You'd go, oh yeah, but what about this and what about that? Anyway, we are getting close to the top of the hour. So, do you think we've made a good stab? What makes good evidence?
I'm sorry, I don't think we have. I think we made a real mess of things. I think on the evidence, we made a big mess about the evidence thing. I would have said that I could have said evidence has to be credible, objective, and verifiable.
Yes, repeatable to make it even better if you're talking about certain sciences.
Well, that's not good enough because credible, we're getting to what the hell is credible. What is credible? And then objective, I think
credible,
objective is
credible. Okay, let me touch on that. Credible has to be track record. Has there been integrity before? Has information been provided that's been of high standard, high quality before? That's where it comes from. You can't have that on no history. You've got to have something there.
See, I don't believe that.
Yeah, you do. How do you get credibility after an event? Of course
only
you do.
In a negative sense. You can have no credibility, but you can't have credibility, if you see what I mean. Just because
of course you can have credibility.
Just because I disbelieve everything the Americans, and I do mean everything the Americans say. When I listen to the Americans to find out what they're saying, and then I automatically assume that the direct opposite is the truth. But just because that's the case with the Americans doesn't mean that I believe the Russians. And I don't actually, because I read the Russian Ministry of Defense report every day. And by and large, I don't believe a word they say.
That's a change of tune from a few weeks back.
No, I don't know what I said a few weeks back, but it's a change of tune. I read the Russian military, the Ministry of Defense reports daily. But when they say that this is the number of people that have killed or soldiers that have died, recruited soldiers that have died, or yada, yada, blah, 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 I'm not interested in that. What I'm interested in is in the front lines. Where are the front lines? Who has made progress and who has not? Who hasn't? That's what facts and evidence. The front lines tell the truth. Everything else is, whatever. And a few weeks ago, we were talking about what happened on the Crimean beach, on the Kerch Bridge.
Yeah.
Is that what we're talking about?
I think so. Who did it?
Who did it? So, obviously the Russians said it wasn't them. And why would they bomb their own bridge, which is their own artery?
Unless it's internal.
What do you mean by internal? No, so if Russian dissidence is different, but it wasn't Russian dissidence being blamed. It was the Russian government that was being blamed. Just like the shelling of the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. Why would they bomb their own power plant? In fact, there's a big joke now amongst the circles I travel in that the Ukrainian energy infrastructure that's been bombed is the Ukrainians doing it, just like the Russians were doing it to them. It doesn't make any sense. Duh. I don't know how we got onto this topic. Credible, to me, doesn't mean, I believe in negative credibility in that you don't have any, but I'm very hard put to say.
Zero credibility normally.
Yeah, I'm very hard, because it's in RT doesn't mean that it's true.
Right.
But because it's in the BBC or CNN means that it is false. That's the way I take credibility.
Okay. See, that's a bit too black and white. Yeah, I think there's shades of grey.
No, I don't. So
if you look at it with shades of grey, you can make an opinion on the information that's been said per article. And that's almost how it has to be treated. You can't say everything they say is nonsense.
Everything they say is nonsense. And then when you read it somewhere else, and it turns out that from a source that you can say, oh, okay, then you can say, well, that BBC one in that case wasn't nonsense. But you just don't assign any value to anything that the BBC says. You assign zero value to everything they're saying. Yeah. Everything. And it's if they say, and you're interested in it, that I don't know, I don't know, not to even use a Prince. If they say that Larry the cat is gay, all right? I'm just saying. Okay. You just put that information to one side. You don't really pay any attention to it, but you find it away somewhere, and then you read or see something somewhere else, and you go, oh, Larry the cat is gay. You see what I mean?
Yeah, you're getting it from 2 points.
Yeah.
This is what I'm saying about credibility.
There are other places where it says Larry the cat is gay, and I think, oh, wow, I didn't know Larry the cat is gay.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say. So that's what credibility is for me.
That's right. That's absolutely right. That is a credibility angle. It's whether past information has been truthful and valuable. So you give them credibility.
You're missing the point. Maybe that's my miscommunication. You see, the other place that says Larry the cat is gay, maybe I've never had any dealings with them before. Maybe this is my very first dealing. But because it's my first dealing, because they've not shown to be not credible, I give them the thingy of the what is it?
Benefit of the doubt.
I give them the benefit of the doubt.
But couldn't you then have assumed, therefore, that the BBC could have given their report to them and they just regurgitated the same
entirely
thing?
Possible. It's entirely possible. And then if we find out that the cat isn't gay,
then you just dismiss them both. Yes.
From that henceforth, rubbish.
Okay. Anyway, listen, we've got to the end of the show here.
Yep. So thank goodness.
Any final points before we wrap up?
I hope the audience doesn't think thank goodness too. What I really like is I like the audience to get involved. I think this should be one of the first shows we open up to having a good argument with a lot of people involved. Because I think we need a lot more voices than just yours and mine.
Well, of course. We always.
So it'd be nice if we could do a live show on this and actually bring people in from all over the place and really get it, because it'd be nice to get to the bottom of what makes good evidence.
Okay, we'll have to have a think of that one. But unfortunately, we have reached the end of the show for another week.